In June 2025, the Middle East was once again thrust into crisis as Israel launched a dramatic military campaign against Iran. The operation, marked by precision airstrikes, assassinations, and cyber warfare, quickly escalated into a regional conflict with global ramifications. This video explores 5 core reasons driving Israel's decision to invade Iran. Reason number 1. Israel wants to destroy Iran's nuclear arsenal. Israel's primary motivation for invading Iran was the urgent need to neutralize what it saw as an existential threat, Iran's rapidly advancing nuclear program. For years, Israeli intelligence had warned that Iran was moving closer to acquiring a nuclear weapon despite international agreements and inspections. The Israeli government argued that diplomatic efforts and sanctions had failed to stop Iran's enrichment of uranium to near weapons-grade levels. In June 2025, Israel launched a series of coordinated airstrikes and cyber attacks targeting Iran's most critical nuclear facilities, including Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan. These attacks aimed to cripple Iran's ability to produce nuclear weapons by destroying centrifuges, reactors, and research centers. Israeli officials also targeted key scientists and engineers involved in the program, hoping to set back Iran's nuclear ambitions by years, if not decades. While some facilities reportedly survived the initial assault, the operation sent a clear message: Israel would not tolerate a nuclear-armed Iran. The destruction of Iran's nuclear infrastructure was seen as essential for Israel's national security and regional stability, even as the international community debated the legality and long-term consequences of such a unilateral action. Number 2. To weaken regional armed groups sponsored by Iran. Another significant driver behind Israel's invasion was the desire to weaken Iran's extensive network of regional proxies and armed groups. Over the past decade, Iran had built a powerful alliance of militias and political groups, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, various Shia militias in Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen, that threatened Israel's security and projected Iranian influence across the Middle East. These groups received funding, weapons, and training from Tehran, enabling them to launch attacks against Israeli targets and destabilize neighboring countries. By striking at Iran's military infrastructure, missile depots, and supply routes, Israel aimed to disrupt the logistical and financial lifelines sustaining these proxies. The campaign also included targeted operations against Iranian Revolutionary Guard commanders and facilities used to coordinate regional operations. Early reports indicated that the offensive severely limited Iran's ability to support its allies, with some militias adopting a lower profile or even splintering under pressure. Israel's strategy was to not only degrade Iran's direct military capabilities, but also to erode its ability to wage asymmetric warfare through proxies, thereby reducing the threat to Israeli territory and interests. Number 3. To protect itself amid collapse of global deterrence on Iran's nuclear program. Israel's decision to invade Iran was also shaped by a growing sense of isolation and vulnerability as global efforts to contain Iran's nuclear ambitions faltered. For years, international bodies like the United Nations and the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, attempted to deter Iran through inspections, sanctions, and diplomatic negotiations. However, by 2025, these measures had largely failed, with Iran openly defying restrictions and accelerating its nuclear program. The collapse of global deterrence left Israel feeling it could no longer rely on international guarantees for its security. Israeli leaders argued that waiting for further diplomatic solutions was too risky, given the existential stakes involved. The invasion was thus framed as a preemptive act of self-defense, justified by the urgent need to prevent Iran from crossing the nuclear threshold. This sense of urgency was compounded by fears that a nuclear-armed Iran would embolden its proxies and destabilize the region further.
Number 4. Israel desires a change in Iran's leadership. A more controversial but explicit goal of Israel's campaign was to encourage regime change in Iran. Israeli officials, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, openly called for the Iranian people to rise up against Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and the ruling clerical establishment. The military campaign targeted not only Iran's nuclear and military infrastructure, but also key figures within the government and security apparatus. The hope was that sustained pressure, combined with internal unrest, would lead to the collapse of the current regime and the emergence of a government more open to dialogue with Israel and the West. While the United States officially distanced itself from calls for regime change, Israel made it clear that it saw the current Iranian leadership as a root cause of regional instability and anti-Israel hostility. Critics warned that such ambitions risked plunging Iran into chaos and could provoke a nationalist backlash. Nevertheless, Israel has calculated that a fundamental shift in Iran's leadership was necessary for long-term peace and security in the region. Number 5. Israel wants to dominate the Middle East. At a strategic level, Israel's invasion of Iran in June 2025 was also about reshaping the regional order and asserting itself as the dominant power in the Middle East. By decisively weakening Iran, its most formidable rival, Israel aimed to deter other adversaries and signal its military superiority to both friends and foes. The campaign was designed not just to neutralize immediate threats, but to fundamentally alter the balance of power in the region. Israeli leaders believed that by crippling Iran's military and nuclear capabilities, undermining its proxies, and destabilizing its leadership, they could establish Israel as the primary arbiter of security in the Middle East. This dominance would allow Israel to set the terms for future peace agreements, influence regional alliances, and deter potential challengers. However, this ambition carried significant risks, including the possibility of prolonged conflict, humanitarian crises, and the emergence of new threats.